Lisa stood in the center of the great hall, her voice carrying across the crystalline chamber where the planetary council sat in a perfect circle. The walls glowed with soft blue light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. She had prepared for this presentation for 3 years, researching the ancient texts that spoke of beings from beyond their known space. The scattered ones were real, she said, her violet eyes scanning the faces of the council members. Our ancestors wrote about them in the old language. They described travelers who came from a dying world, spreading across the stars like seeds in the wind. Elder Morven leaned forward, his silver hair catching the light. These are myths, young scholar. Stories to entertain children. Lisa shook her head. But what if they are not? What if somewhere out there these people still exist? What if— She stopped. Her mouth hung open mid-word. Every muscle in her body locked. Around her the council members stiffened. Across the entire planet of Velkara, millions of people froze in place. The telepathic network that connected all Velkarans suddenly screamed with a single sensation. Something vast, something wrong, something that did not belong. The feeling passed through Lisa like ice water. Her twin sister Essa, working in the orbital monitoring station far above the planet, sent a pulse of pure terror through their shared bond. Above us, Lisa whispered. Something appeared above us. The council chamber erupted into confusion. Voices overlapped as the telepathic network buzzed with questions and fear. Elder Morven raised his hand for silence, but before he could speak, the chamber's central display activated on its own. The image showed black space, stars, and then, sliding into view like a predator from the dark, a ship. It was not like anything the Velkarans had seen before. Their own vessels were smooth, curved, grown from living materials that sang with bioluminescent light. This ship was different. It had hard angles and scarred metal. Burns marked its hull in black streaks. Parts of it looked broken, held together with visible patches. Weapons bristled from its surface like thorns on a deadly plant. Defense satellites have locked onto the vessel, announced Controller Venn, his fingers dancing across a light panel. It is heavily damaged but still operational. The power readings are substantial. Who are they? Elder Morven demanded. Why do they not identify themselves? Lisa could not look away from the screen. The ship hung there in the silence of space, and she felt something stirring in her memory. The old texts, the descriptions of metal vessels that carried the scattered ones. A voice crackled through the chamber's communication system. It spoke in a language the Velkarans did not know, rough and urgent. The translation system struggled for a moment, then the words came through clearly. This world is in danger. The swarm is coming. You have 72 hours. Silence fell across the chamber. Lisa felt her hearts beating rapidly in her chest. The swarm. She had never heard that word before, but the way the voice spoke, it carried weight, terror, exhaustion, and something else, determination. This is a threat, said Council Member Thera, her face pale. They come to our world with weapons and speak of danger. They bring the danger themselves. Or they bring a warning, Lisa heard herself say. All eyes turned to her. Perhaps they are trying to help us. Elder Morven studied the ship on the display. We have lived in peace for 3,000 years under the protection of the Galactic Concordat. If there was true danger, the Concordat would have warned us. May I speak with them? Lisa asked. Let me be part of a contact team. We should learn what they know. The council members looked at each other. Lisa could feel their thoughts touching through the telepathic network, sharing concerns and possibilities. Finally, Elder Morven nodded. Very well. You will go with Ambassador Krell and a security team. But remember, young scholar, sometimes those who speak of danger are themselves the greatest threat. 3 hours later, Lisa stood in the docking bay of the orbital station, watching as a small transport prepared for departure. Her sister Essa gripped her hand tightly. I do not like this, Essa said through their private mental link. That ship feels wrong, dark, like it has seen terrible things. That is why I must go, Lisa replied. To understand. Ambassador Krell approached, his formal robes flowing behind him. 6 security officers followed, though Lisa noticed they carried no weapons. Velkarans did not believe in violence. They had never needed to. The transport launched smoothly, crossing the distance between the station and the mysterious ship. As they grew closer, Lisa could see the damage more clearly. Holes in the hull, some hastily sealed with metal plates, scorch marks that spoke of weapons fire. This vessel had been in a battle, Many battles. They are opening a docking port, their pilot announced. The transport slid into the ship's interior, and Lissa felt the artificial gravity take hold. The air that hissed into their craft smelled strange, metallic, recycled, old. The airlock opened and they stepped into a corridor lit by harsh white lights. A human stood waiting for them. Lissa had never seen a human before, but she knew immediately what he was. The ancient texts had described them. 2 eyes instead of the Velkaran 4, skin tones and shades of brown instead of the soft blue of her people, hair that grew from their heads in wild patterns. This human looked tired. Deep shadows hung under his eyes. His uniform was clean but worn. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who had not slept properly in a very long time. "I am Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth Alliance destroyer Indomitable," he said. The translation came through clearly. "Thank you for coming. I wish we had more time for proper introductions, but we do not. Please follow me." He turned and walked down the corridor without waiting for a response. Ambassador Krell looked offended by the lack of ceremony, but Lissa hurried to follow. Something about the captain's urgency felt genuine. They entered a room filled with displays and control stations. Humans worked at various posts, their movements efficient and practiced. Lissa noticed how many stations sat empty. This ship was built for many more people than currently served aboard it. A human woman approached, her dark skin contrasting with her white medical coat. She smiled warmly at the Velkarans. "I'm Dr. Sarah Okonkwo. I have studied many species, but I have never met your people before. Your telepathic abilities are fascinating." Before Lissa could respond, Captain Chen activated a large central display. "I'm going to show you something. It will be difficult to watch, but you need to understand what is coming." The display lit up with footage from space. A planet hung in the black, green, and blue and beautiful. Then dark shapes appeared at the edge of the frame. Not ships, Lissa realized with growing horror. Living things. Enormous creatures that moved through space like fish through water. Behind them came smaller vessels. Thousands of them, all connected by some invisible link. The swarm fell upon the planet like locusts on a field. They wrapped around it, covered it, consumed it. The footage showed cities burning, oceans boiling away, the atmosphere itself being stripped and processed. Within hours, the beautiful world became a dead gray sphere. Lissa felt sick. Beside her, Ambassador Krell had gone completely pale, his 4 eyes wide with shock. "This happened 4 months ago," Captain Chen said quietly. "The planet was called Haven. 2 billion people lived there. The Krethik swarm gave them no warning, no chance to surrender. They just consumed everything." He changed the image. Another planet dying. Another. 3 more. The Galactic Concordat tried to fight them. They failed. 2 years ago, they began abandoning the outer sectors, focusing their defense around the core worlds. Evacuation orders went out across the standard communication networks. Captain Chen looked directly at Lissa. "Your world never received the warning. Your comm relay is outdated. You have been living in peace, not knowing that the swarm has been consuming everything in its path, moving closer with each world it takes." "How long?" Ambassador Krell whispered. "How long until they reach us?" "Our instruments detected them entering the system 3 hours ago," Dr. Okonkwo said gently. "They are slowing to feed on the outer planets first, building their numbers. We estimate they will reach Velkar in 72 hours. Lissa found her voice. "And you? Why are you here? Why just one ship?" Captain Chen looked at her and she saw something in his eyes that made her heart ache. Loss, determination, a refusal to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. "Because," he said simply, "someone has to warn you. Someone has to give you a chance to fight." The planetary council chamber buzzed with heated debate. Lissa sat in the observation gallery, watching as the council members argued about what to do. Half believed Captain Chen and wanted to prepare for evacuation. The other half insisted this was a trick, that the humans themselves were the real threat. "They show us images," Council Member Thera said loudly, "but images can be false. How do we know this swarm is real? How do we know these humans did not create the footage to frighten us?" Elder Morven raised his hand for quiet. "Ambassador Krell, you spent 6 hours aboard their vessel. What is your assessment?" Ambassador Krell stood slowly. "I believe they are telling the truth. Their ship is damaged from combat. Their crew is exhausted. These are not the signs of an invading force. These are survivors. Survivors who came to us with weapons and warnings of doom. Thera countered. I say we should contact the Concordat ourselves and verify their claims. We have tried, Elder Morven said wearily. Our long-range communications are not functioning properly. We have not received any transmissions from the Concordat in over a year, but we assumed it was technical difficulties. Lisa stood up, her voice carrying across the chamber. Request permission to speak, Elder. Morvan nodded. The council recognizes Scholar Lissa. I want to return to the human ship, Lissa said. I want to learn more about them, about their culture, their history, their way of thinking. If we are to make a decision about our world's future, we should understand who is trying to help us. Thera shook her head. You are too young, too idealistic. You see adventure and mystery. You do not see danger. Then send someone older and wiser with me, Lissa replied. But we are running out of time. 72 hours, they said. We have already used 12 of those hours in debate. Elder Morven considered this. Very well. You may return to their ship with a diplomatic team. Learn what you can. The council will continue evaluating our options. 6 hours later, Lisa stood on the bridge of the Indomitable once more. This time, Captain Chen had agreed to give them a full tour of the ship. Dr. Okonkwo served as their guide, leading them through narrow corridors and cramped compartments. We are operating at 25% crew capacity, Dr. Okonkwo explained as they walked. This destroyer was designed for 800 people. We have just under 200 now. What happened to the others? Lisa asked quietly. Some transferred to other ships when we were ordered to retreat. Others died in combat. Some stayed behind to help with evacuations on worlds we could not fully save. Dr. Okonkwo paused at a corridor intersection. Captain Chen refused the order to retreat. He said as long as the ship could fight, he would keep fighting. Keep buying time for people to escape. They passed the ship's medical bay. Lissa saw human crew members receiving treatment for various injuries. Burns, broken bones, exhaustion. The doctor noticed her looking. We have been fighting for 3 months straight, Dr. Okonkwo said. Jumping from world to world, trying to slow the swarm's advance. We have saved 12 planets so far. Evacuated populations, given them time to run. At what cost? Lissa wondered aloud. Everything, replied a voice behind them. Lissa turned to see a young human man in an engineer's uniform. He had grease on his face and tired eyes. Sorry, I did not mean to interrupt. I am Lieutenant Torres, Chief Engineer. Dr. Okonkwo smiled at him. Torres here has kept this ship running with spare parts and prayer. Torres pulled out a small photograph from his pocket, showing it to Lissa. 2 small human children smiled at the camera, their arms around each other. My kids, he said. They are safe on Earth with their mother. I volunteered for this mission so they could grow up in a universe where the swarm did not eat everything. Lissa felt something twist in her chest. She thought of her own sister, Essa, of all the young Velkarans who had never known fear or danger. Do you think we can win? She asked. Torres looked at the photo for a long moment before putting it away. I think we can try. That has to be enough. They continued the tour, and Lissa began to understand something about humans. They were scarred, broken, exhausted, but they kept going. They kept fighting. It was not in their nature to give up. In the mess hall, she met more of the crew. There was Chen's second-in-command, Commander Williams, who had lost her entire family on a world called New Providence. There was Sergeant Jackson, a Marine who told stories about his grandmother's cooking while checking his weapons. There was Ensign Park, barely 20 years old, who admitted she was terrified but stayed at her post anyway. Each human she met carried wounds, but each one also carried hope. That evening, Lissa sat with Captain Chen in his private quarters. The room was small and simple. A bed, a desk, and walls covered with photographs. Images of smiling people, of places that no longer existed, my family, Chen said, noticing her looking. My wife and daughter. They lived on New Providence. I was in deep space when the swarm hit. By the time I got the message, it was too late. I am sorry, Lissa said softly. Chen poured 2 cups of bitter black liquid he called coffee. I kept fighting because I had nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. Then I realized something. Every world we save, every evacuation we complete, that is another family that does not have to feel what I feel. Another child who gets to grow up. That became my new purpose. Your people have known so much pain, Lissa observed. I read about your history in your database. The wars you fought among yourselves. The disasters. the struggles to survive. How do you keep going? Chen smiled, but it was a sad smile. Because we are too stubborn to quit. Humans have a saying, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. We fail constantly. We make terrible mistakes, but we learn, we adapt, we survive. My people have never known war, Lysa admitted. We have lived in peace for 3,000 years. We do not understand violence. The thought of fighting, of hurting others, it goes against everything we believe. Then you have been very fortunate, Chen said. But fortune does not last forever. The universe is not a peaceful place. It is beautiful and wondrous, yes, but it is also dangerous. Sometimes the only way to protect peace is to be willing to fight for it. Lisa thought about this. The council will not agree to arm our people. Many believe that becoming warriors means losing who we are. Chen leaned forward. I am not asking you to become warriors. I am asking you to become survivors. There is a difference. Warriors seek out conflict. Survivors do what they must to protect what they love. A chime sounded and Dr. Okonkwo's voice came through the communication system. Captain, you need to come to the bridge. We are detecting movement from the swarm. Chen and Lisa rushed to the bridge. The main display showed the outer planets of the Velkaran system. Dark shapes moved around them. Thousands of bioships feeding on the asteroid fields and outer worlds. They are building numbers, Commander Williams reported, converting matter into more ships. At their current growth rate, they will have doubled their forces by the time they reach Velkara. How many? Chen asked. Current count is 3,000 individual vessels. Projected count at contact 6,000. The bridge fell silent. Lisa did the math in her head. 6,000 swarm ships against 1 human destroyer and whatever civilian vessels Velkara could muster. We need to start evacuations now, Chen said firmly. Every hour we delay costs lives. The council has not approved evacuations, Lisa said. They are still debating. Chen turned to her and she saw the frustration in his eyes. Then make them understand. I have watched 17 worlds die because people waited too long to act. Because they could not believe the danger was real until it was too late. Do not let Velkara be the 18th. Lisa nodded. She felt something changing inside her. The scholar who had stood in the council chamber talking about ancient myths seemed like a different person. She had seen too much now. Understood too much. She activated her communication link to the planet's surface. Elder Morvan, this is Scholar Lissa. I am requesting an emergency council session. The situation has changed. As she waited for the response, Dr. Okonkwo approached her. You are very brave, the doctor said. Coming up here facing these truths, many species we have encountered refused to believe until the swarm was already consuming their worlds. I am not brave, Lisa replied. I am terrified. But Captain Chen taught me something. Being afraid and acting anyway, that is what courage really means. The communication system crackled. Elder Morvan's voice came through, sounding old and tired. The council will hear you, scholar. Return to the surface and present your findings. Lysa looked at the display one more time, watching the dark shapes of the swarm multiply in the outer system. 60 hours remained. She hoped it would be enough time to convince her people to act, because now she understood what Captain Chen and his crew had been trying to tell them all along. Hope was not about believing everything would be fine. Hope was about choosing to fight for survival even when the odds looked impossible. I will be back, she promised Chen. One way or another, we will be ready. Lisa stood before the Planetary Council for the second time in 3 days, but everything had changed. She no longer felt like a young scholar hoping to impress her elders. She felt like someone carrying the weight of her entire world on her shoulders. The swarm is real, she said, her voice steady. It is growing stronger every hour. In 58 hours, it will reach our world. We must evacuate everyone we can and prepare to defend those who cannot leave in time. Elder Morvan studied her carefully. You have changed, young one. Something in you is different. I have seen what is coming, Lisa replied. I have spoken with people who have watched worlds die. They came here to our planet to warn us. The least we can do is listen. Council member Thera stood up, her face angry. You want us to become like them. Like these humans. You want us to arm ourselves, to build weapons, to become violent creatures. We are Velkarans. We do not harm others. The swarm will not care about our philosophy, Lisa said. It does not negotiate. It does not show mercy. It consumes. If we do nothing, we will all die. Our culture, our history, our way of life. All of it will be erased. Better to die as who we are than to live as something else, Thera insisted. Lisa felt anger rise in her chest, hot and unfamiliar. Easy words when you are not the one watching children being consumed. Captain Chen lost his family to the swarm. Dr. Okonkwo left a comfortable life to fight. Lieutenant Torres carries a picture of his children and works until he collapses because he wants them to have a future. They are not asking us to become violent. They are asking us to survive. The council chamber erupted in debate. Voices overlapped, arguments flew back and forth. Lisa felt her sister's presence through their telepathic bond. Asa was in the orbital station watching the swarm's approach. The fear coming through their connection was overwhelming. Finally, Elder Morven raised his hand for silence. We will put it to a vote. All in favor of full evacuation and defensive preparations? Hands rose slowly. 5 council members. Not enough. All opposed? 6 hands. The vote failed. Morvan sighed deeply. However, we can agree to a compromise. We will prepare evacuation ships and strengthen our orbital shields. We will not arm our people for combat, but we will train volunteers in basic ship operations and emergency procedures. Those who wish to learn from the humans may do so. Does this satisfy both sides? Reluctant nods came from around the chamber. It was not what Lisa wanted, but it was something. Then let us begin, Morvan said. Scholar Lissa, you will coordinate with the human ship. Organize the volunteers. May the light guide us all. The next 2 days passed in a blur of frantic activity. Lissa barely slept. She moved between the planet's surface and the Indomitable, organizing training sessions and evacuation plans. Captain Chen sent teams of humans down to Velkara to teach the volunteers. Sergeant Jackson ran crash courses in ship operations. Commander Williams taught basic tactical thinking. Dr. Okonkwo showed Velkaran medical staff how to treat combat injuries, something they had never needed to know before. But the cultural gap was enormous. When Jackson demonstrated how to operate a weapons console, many Velkarans became physically ill. The thought of deliberately harming another living being went against their deepest instincts. This is impossible, Jackson told Lissa after the 3rd training session. No offense to your people, but most of them cannot even look at a weapon without getting sick. How are they supposed to fight? I do not know, Lisa admitted. But we have to try. She spent hours with her sister Essa, preparing the orbital station for battle. They reinforced the shields and plotted evacuation routes. At night, they would sit together and talk through their telepathic link, sharing fears and hopes. Are we going to die? Essa asked one night. Maybe, Lisa replied honestly, but maybe not. The humans have survived impossible situations before. Perhaps we can too. On the 2nd day of preparations, Lissa found herself in the Indomitable's library, researching human history. She wanted to understand what made them so resilient. What she found both horrified and fascinated her. Humans had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. Nuclear wars, climate disasters, pandemics. They had conquered their own world through violence and blood. But they had also created beautiful art, music, and poetry. They had built civilizations that reached for the stars. They contained contradictions, capable of great cruelty and great kindness. She found records of their wars. The world wars of the 20th century where millions died, but also stories of individuals who had risked everything to save others. Soldiers who had covered grenades with their bodies to protect their friends. Civilians who had hidden refugees from persecution. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Dr. Okonkwo found her there, surrounded by holographic displays. Finding anything useful? I am trying to understand, Lisa said. How do your people carry so much darkness and still have hope? The doctor sat down beside her. We remember. We remember the mistakes and try to do better. We remember the heroes and try to be worthy of their sacrifice. Every human child learns about the wars, yes, but also about the peace that followed. We learn that we can change, that we can choose to be better than we were. My people have never had to make that choice, Lisa said. We have always been peaceful. Now we must decide if we can be something else without losing ourselves. Okonkwo smiled gently. You know what I have learned studying different species? Every culture is defined by the choices it makes in crisis. You are not losing who you are. You are discovering who you can become. That evening, Lissa addressed a gathering of 5,000 Velkaran volunteers. They filled the central plaza of Lumenis, their faces showing a mixture of fear and determination. I will not lie to you, she told them. What is coming is terrible. Many of us may die. But we have a choice. We can run and hope we survive, or we can stand and fight for our home. She paused, feeling the telepathic network pulse with emotion. The humans who came to warn us, they could have run too. Their ship is damaged. They are outnumbered. But they stayed. They chose to give us a chance. Now we must choose what to do with that chance, a voice called out from the crowd. What if fighting changes us? What if we become violent like other species? Lissa thought about Captain Chen, about his sad smile when he talked about his lost family, about Torres and his children's photograph, about Jackson's grandmother's cooking, about all the small human moments of kindness she had witnessed aboard a warship. The humans taught me something, she said. Violence does not define you. Your choices define you. They fight not because they love violence, but because they love what they are protecting. We can do the same. We can defend our world and still remain Velkarans. We can be strong without being cruel. The crowd murmured, the telepathic network buzzing with debate. Then someone began a traditional Velkaran chant, a song of unity and strength. Others joined in. The sound grew, filling the plaza, reaching up to the stars where the swarm approached. Lissa felt tears on her face. Her people were afraid, yes, but they were not broken. Not yet. Later that night, she returned to the Indomitable to report on the progress. Captain Chen looked more tired than ever, but he managed to smile when she told him about the volunteers. You are a natural leader, he said. Your people are lucky to have you. I do not feel like a leader, Lissa admitted. I feel like I am making everything up as I go. Chen laughed, a sound that seemed strange coming from someone so exhausted. That is what all leaders feel like. We just hide it better. He pulled up a display showing the swarm's position. They had finished feeding on the outer planets and were beginning their approach to Velkara. The dark mass of bioships moved through space like a living nightmare. 40 hours, Chen said quietly. Then it begins. Will we win? Lissa asked. Chen was silent for a long moment. Honestly? Probably not. The numbers are against us. But here is what I have learned in 3 months of fighting them. The swarm expects prey to run or freeze in fear. They are not prepared for prey that fights back. If we can surprise them, hurt them, disrupt their coordination, we might create enough chaos for your evacuation ships to escape. And the Indomitable? Lissa asked, though she already knew the answer. We will buy you as much time as we can, Chen said simply. Lissa felt something break open inside her chest. These humans, these strange, violent, hopeful creatures were planning to die for her world. For people they had just met. There must be another way, she said. Some plan where you survive too. Chen put his hand on her shoulder, a human gesture of comfort. Maybe there is. We have 40 hours to find it. So let us not give up yet, Lissa nodded. She returned to the planet's surface and threw herself into preparations with renewed energy. She coordinated evacuation schedules, organized supply distributions, and checked in with volunteers. She barely ate, barely slept. But in quiet moments, when she looked up at the stars, she thought about Captain Chen's words. We are too stubborn to quit. Maybe, just maybe, that stubbornness could be contagious. Maybe it already was. All across Velkara, her people were preparing for something they had never imagined. They were learning to be more than they had been. Not because they wanted to, but because they had to. The swarm was coming, and the Velkarans would be ready to meet it. The warning alarm screamed across every communication channel on Velkara. Lissa jerked awake from a brief sleep, her heart's pounding. Through the telepathic network, she felt millions of minds crying out in fear. They were here. She rushed to the window of her quarters and looked up. The sky was still bright with morning light, but she could feel it through her connection to Essa. Her sister was in the orbital station, watching through the sensors as the swarm emerged from the outer system. Lissa, Essa's mental voice was tight with terror. There are so many. More than the humans predicted. Lissa activated her communication device. How many? 8,000 ships, came Commander Williams' voice from the Indomitable. They fed more than we expected. They are accelerating toward Velkara. Estimated time to orbital space, 6 hours, 6 hours. Lissa felt her legs go weak. They had prepared for 40 hours. Now they had 6. Begin evacuations immediately. Captain Chen's voice cut through the channel. All civilian ships depart now. Do not wait for full capacity. Go. We will cover your escape. Across Velkara, chaos erupted. The carefully planned evacuation schedules dissolved as people rushed to the spaceports. Parents carried children. The elderly were helped onto transports. The telepathic network buzzed with panic, fear spreading like wildfire through the shared consciousness. Lissa ran to the central spaceport of Lumenis. She needed to help organize the evacuation to keep people calm, but when she arrived, she saw the crowds pushing and shoving in their desperation to board ships. Families were being separated. Children were crying. "Please," she shouted, projecting her thoughts through the telepathic network as strongly as she could. "There is room for everyone. But we must be organized. Please trust me." Her mental voice cut through the panic. People recognized her from her speech 2 days ago. Slowly, the chaos began to organize itself. Lines formed. Families stayed together. The ships began launching in orderly waves, but it was not fast enough. Lissa checked the time. 4 hours until the swarm reached orbital space. Half the population was still on the ground. She contacted the Indomitable. "Captain Chen, we need more time." "We will do what we can," he replied. Through the communication channel, she could hear the bridge crew working frantically. "The swarm is splitting into 3 groups. One is heading straight for the planet. The other 2 are trying to flank us and cut off the evacuation routes." Lisa felt cold. "What are you going to do?" "The only thing we can. We are going to hit them as hard as possible and make them focus on us instead of you." In orbit above Velcara, the Indomitable moved into position. The human destroyer looked tiny against the backdrop of space. One small vessel preparing to face 8,000. Captain Chen stood on the bridge, his hands gripping the command console. "All stations report ready," Commander Williams said. "Weapons armed. Shields at maximum. Engines ready for combat maneuvers." Chen looked at his crew. These people who had followed him for 3 months, fighting a war they could not win, buying time for strangers to escape. He saw determination in their eyes. Also fear. But mostly he saw people who had made a choice to stand and fight. "Open a channel to all Velcaran ships," he ordered. When the channel opened, he spoke clearly. "This is Captain Marcus Chen of the Indomitable to all Velcaran vessels. Begin your evacuation runs. Stay in the southern orbital corridor. We will keep the swarm away from that vector. Do not deviate from the planned routes. And do not look back. Just run." He closed the channel and turned to his weapons officer. "Target the lead swarm ships. Let them know we are here." The Indomitable's railguns opened fire. Streams of hypervelocity projectiles tore through space, smashing into the front ranks of the swarm. Bioships exploded in bursts of organic matter. The humans cheered as dozens of enemy vessels died, but more came. So many more. "Launch missiles," Chen ordered. "Everything we have." Nuclear-tipped missiles streaked from the destroyer's tubes. They vanished into the swarm's mass and detonated. Brilliant flashes of light turned night into day. Hundreds of bioships disintegrated in the blasts. The swarm's response was immediate. They changed course, abandoning their flanking maneuvers. The entire swarm, 8,000 strong, turned toward the Indomitable. "It worked," Williams said quietly. "They are coming for us." "Good," Chen replied. "That means they are not going for the evacuation ships. All power to forward shields. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." The swarm opened fire. Organic projectiles, biological weapons, energy beams of unknown origin, all of it focused on one human destroyer. The Indomitable's shields flared as they absorbed the impacts. The ship shook violently. "Hull breaches on decks 5 and 7, reported the damage control officer. "Sealing emergency bulkheads. Keep firing," Chen ordered. "Do not stop." On Velcara's surface, Lissa watched the battle through the orbital station's sensor feeds that Essa shared with her telepathically. She saw the Indomitable surrounded by a storm of enemy fire, fighting alone against impossible odds. She saw the human ship taking hit after hit, pieces of its hull breaking away, but still it fought. She felt something rising in her chest. Not fear, not anymore, anger. These creatures, this swarm, they had come to her world to consume everything she loved, and one human ship was standing between them and destruction. One ship was not enough. Essa. She sent through their mental link. "How many Velcaran ships are still in orbit?" "Maybe 300, her sister replied. "Mining vessels, cargo haulers, civilian transports that stayed to help with evacuation. Can they fight?" There was a pause. "They have tools that could be used as weapons. Mining lasers, cargo manipulators. Nothing compared to what the swarm has, but something." Lissa made a decision. She broadcast on all frequencies, speaking both through technology and through the telepathic network. Her thoughts reached every Velcaran in orbit and on the surface. My people, I know we are afraid. I know we have never fought before. I know everything in our culture tells us that violence is wrong. But look at what the humans are doing. Look at that one ship buying us time with their lives. They fight not because they love violence, but because they love life. They fight for us. Strangers they just met. She paused, feeling the attention of millions focused on her. We have a choice. We can run and let them die alone. Or we can stand with them. We can fight for our world. We can be more than we have been. Through the telepathic network, she felt the response. Thousands of minds connecting, sharing thoughts and emotions. Fear, yes, but also determination. Anger at the injustice of what was happening. And something her people had never felt before. The will to fight back. Those of you in ships, Lissa continued, if you are willing, arm your mining lasers and your tools. Join the Indomitable. Show the swarm that Velcara is not defenseless prey. In orbit, 300 Velcaran ships hesitated. Then one by one they changed course. Mining vessels designed for peaceful work turned toward the battle. Cargo ships that had never seen combat moved to support the human destroyer. Captain Chen watched in shock as his sensors showed the approaching Velcaran vessels. What are they doing? I told them to evacuate. They are coming to help, Williams said, her voice filled with wonder. The Velcaran ships were not warships. They were slow and clumsy in combat. Their weapons were mining tools not meant for battle. But there were 300 of them, and they came with a desperation born of protecting their home. A mining ship moved alongside the Indomitable and opened fire with its cutting laser. The beam sliced through a swarm bioship, cutting it in half. A cargo hauler used its manipulator arms to grab an enemy vessel and crush it. A passenger transport rammed a bioship that was targeting an evacuation shuttle, destroying them both but saving the lives aboard the shuttle. Coordinate with them, Chen ordered. Share our targeting data. Make every shot count. The battle became a chaotic swirl of ships and fire. The swarm was still vastly superior in numbers and power. They destroyed Velcaran ships with horrifying efficiency. Lisa watched through S's sensors as ships she recognized, piloted by people she knew, exploded into clouds of debris. But the Velcarans did not break. For every ship destroyed, the others fought harder. They were discovering something about themselves they never knew existed. They could be fierce when defending what they loved. On the Indomitable's bridge, alarms screamed constantly. Hull breaches on all decks, the damage officer reported. Engineering reports the reactor is overheating. Weapon systems failing. Chen looked at his tactical display. The swarm had lost maybe 1,000 ships, but 7,000 remained. And they were pushing through the defense line, getting closer to Velcara. He made the calculation instantly. They could not win, but they could still buy more time. Engineering, he spoke into the communication system. Prepare to overload the reactor. Set it for maximum yield. Lieutenant Torres's voice came back, shaking slightly. Sir, that would destroy the ship. I know, Chen said quietly. But we can take a lot of them with us. And every swarm ship we destroy is one less attacking Velcara. One less chasing the evacuation ships. Williams turned to him. Marcus, there has to be another way. If there is, I do not see it, Chen replied. He looked at his crew. All hands, this is the captain. Abandon ship. Evacuate to pods. That is an order. Sir, we are not leaving you, Sergeant Jackson said from his station. This is not a debate, Chen snapped. You have done your duty. You have fought bravely. Now Liev, go. Slowly, reluctantly, the crew began moving to the escape pods. Chen watched them go. These people who had trusted him, followed him, fought beside him. He hoped they would make it. From Velcara's surface, Lysa felt something shift in the telepathic network. S's panic came through like a scream. Lissa, the human ship. Its power readings are spiking. I think they are going to... No, Lisa whispered. She understood. Captain Chen was going to ram the swarm center and explode his reactor. He was going to sacrifice himself and his ship. She broadcast again, her mental voice reaching every Velcaran in the system. The humans are about to make their final stand. They are going to die for us. For people they barely know. This is what courage looks like. This is what sacrifice means. Through the network, she felt the response: grief, admiration, and determination. Her people would not let this sacrifice be in vain. They would remember. They would survive. They would become worthy of what the humans were giving them. The Indomitable turned, all power to engines, and began its final run toward the heart of the swarm. Captain Marcus Chen stood alone on the bridge of the Indomitable. The rest of the crew had evacuated as ordered, though he knew some had refused and were still fighting in the engineering sections, keeping the ship running for its final run. Stubborn, all of them. He would have done the same. The destroyer accelerated toward the center of the swarm. Thousands of bioships turned to face him, their weapons charging. Chen armed every remaining missile, every railgun, every weapon system that still functioned. If he was going to die, he would take as many of them as possible. On the planet's surface, Lisa felt the telepathic network surge with emotion. Every Velcaran was connected, sharing the same thoughts. They watched through sensor feeds, through shared consciousness as the human ship made its suicide run. Then Lisa felt something impossible. The telepathic network was extending, reaching, touching, and somehow, some way connecting with the minds aboard the Indomitable. Captain Chen gasped as foreign thoughts flooded his consciousness. Millions of Velcaran minds all focused on him. He felt their gratitude, their sorrow, their desperate wish for him to survive, and beneath it all their determination to help. Through this connection he could see the battle as the Velcaran saw it. Every ship, every movement, every angle. The swarm's formations were visible from 1,000 different perspectives simultaneously. He understood in that instant what the Velcaran telepathy could do. Commander Williams, he spoke into his communication device, reaching the escape pods. Are you receiving this? The telepathic network? Yes, sir, Williams replied, her voice filled with wonder. I can see everything. All our ships. All their ships. It's like having perfect battlefield awareness, Chen smiled. Maybe they had a chance after all. Through the telepathic link, Lisa projected instructions. She had studied military tactics in the human database. She understood strategy now in a way she never had before. And with the telepathic network connecting all Velcaran ships, they could coordinate in ways no other species could. Form a corridor, she broadcast. Create a path for the Indomitable to reach the swarm's center. Protect the human ship. Move as one. The 300 Velcaran vessels responded instantly. They moved in perfect synchronization, impossible coordination. They formed a living corridor through the swarm, their weapons firing continuously to keep the bioships back. The Indomitable plunged through this corridor, its weapons blazing. Chen saw what Lisa was planning. The swarm had a central coordination node, a massive bioship at the heart of their formation that controlled the hive mind. If they could destroy it, the swarm would lose cohesion. But they had to get close enough. And the swarm was realizing the danger. Hundreds of bioships turned to block the corridor. They focused their fire on the Velcaran vessels, keeping the path open. Ships exploded. Lisa felt each death through the telepathic network. Felt the pilot's final thoughts as they died. It was agony, but she kept broadcasting coordinates and strategies. Mining ship Crystal Song moved to Sector 4. Cargo hauler Dawn's Light, cover the left flank. Transport Hope's Promise, fall back. Your shields are failing. The Velcarans obeyed, moving with inhuman precision. For every ship lost, another filled its place. They had never fought before, but they were learning fast. And they were fighting not for glory or conquest, but for survival. For home. For each other. Essa in the orbital station managed the sensor data, feeding information through the network. She could see the patterns, the weak points in the swarm's formation. She shared this with everyone simultaneously. The coordination node is moving, Essa broadcast. It is trying to hide behind the outer ships. We need to flush it out, Chen replied through the telepathic link. It was strange thinking at people instead of talking to them, but it was efficient. Lisa had an idea. What if we threaten something it cannot ignore? Something it must defend? Like what? Chen asked. Itself, Lisa said. The swarm's ships are all connected to the hive mind. What if we attack from multiple directions at once? It would have to choose what to protect. Through the network, the strategy formed in everyone's mind simultaneously. The Velcaran ships split into smaller groups, each targeting different sections of the swarm. The bioships had to divide their attention, splitting their forces, and there, at the center, the coordination node was exposed. I see it, Chen said. Plotting intercept course. All weapons target that node. The Indomitable surged forward. Swarm ships tried to block its path, but the Velcaran vessels rammed them, sacrificed themselves to clear the way. Lisa felt each death like a knife in her chest, but she kept the network focused. Kept everyone coordinated. Chen's ship was dying. Half the systems were offline. The hull was breached in a dozen places. But the engines still worked. The reactor was still building toward critical overload, and the weapons were still firing. 200 meters, he counted down. 100 meters. 50 meters. The coordination node tried to flee, but it was too late. The Indomitable crashed into it at full speed, and Chen detonated the reactor. The explosion was like a second sun being born. A sphere of nuclear fire expanded outward, vaporizing everything nearby. The coordination node disintegrated. Hundreds of bioships caught in the blast were destroyed instantly. Through the telepathic network, every Velkaran felt the explosion. They felt Captain Chen's final thought. Good luck. Then he was gone. For a moment the battle paused. The swarm ships stopped moving, their connection to the hive mind severed. They drifted, confused and directionless. Lisa felt tears streaming down her face, but she did not stop. Now, while they are disorganized, drive them back! The Velkaran ship surged forward. They destroyed the confused bioships methodically, efficiently. Without coordination, the swarm was just individual creatures, dangerous but manageable. But then the swarm adapted. The bioships began to regroup, forming new patterns. They were establishing a secondary coordination system. The battle was not over. In the orbital station, Essa made a discovery. Lysa, the escape pods from the Indomitable. There are survivors, 37 of them, including Dr. Okonkwo and Commander Williams. Hope sparked in Lysa's chest. Not all the humans had died. Some had survived. Rescue them, she ordered. Bring them to the station. But the swarm had noticed the pods too. A group of bioships broke away, moving to intercept and destroy the escaping humans. Lisa did not hesitate. She was not a pilot. She had never flown in combat before, but she ran to the orbital station's docking bay where her personal transport was berthed. The small vessel she used for traveling between the planet and orbit. Essa grabbed her arm. What are you doing? The humans sacrificed everything for us, Lisa said. I will not let their survivors die. She launched before Essa could argue. The small transport was not armed, not meant for combat. But it was fast. She pushed the engines to maximum, racing toward the escape pods. The swarm ships saw her coming. They opened fire. Lysa dodged, her hands moving on the controls, guided by instinct and desperation. Energy beams flashed past her hull. She felt impacts, heard alarm screaming. Hold on, she broadcast to the humans in the pods. I am coming for you. She reached the first pod and activated her transport's docking clamp. The pod attached with a solid clunk. Then the second pod. The third. Her small ship was not designed to carry this many, but she kept going. A bioship moved to block her path. Lisa saw the weapon ports opening. She was going to die. But at least she would die trying to save those who had saved her world. Then a Velkaran mining ship appeared from nowhere, ramming the bioship. The pilot's mental voice came through the network. Go, Scholar. Save them. The mining ship exploded along with the bioship. Lisa did not have time to grieve. She collected the last pods and turned back toward the station, her transport's engines straining under the overload. More Velkaran ships appeared, forming a protective formation around her. They had seen what she was doing. They understood. These humans had earned their protection, their sacrifice. Lisa made it to the station with all 37 escape pods attached to her ship. As she docked, rescue teams rushed to open the pods and bring the survivors inside. Dr. Okonkwo emerged, bruised and shocked but alive. Commander Williams followed, her uniform torn and bloodied. Lieutenant Torres held his photograph of his children, tears on his face. You came for us, Okonkwo said to Lisa. You risked yourself. You risked everything for us first, Lisa replied. We just returned the favor. Back in the battle, the swarm was slowly being pushed back. Without their coordination node, they were losing cohesion. The Velkaran ships, guided by the telepathic network, fought with a unity the swarm could not match. But the cost was terrible. Of the 300 Velkaran ships that had joined the fight, fewer than 100 remained. Thousands had died. The telepathic network carried their final thoughts, their love for their world, their determination that others should survive. Hour by hour, the battle continued. The Velkarans were exhausted, their ships damaged, but they did not stop. They had learned something about themselves. They could fight. They could endure. They could win. Finally, as Velkara's sun began to set, the last swarm ship was destroyed. The debris field in orbit told the story of a battle that should have been impossible to win. Silence fell across the telepathic network. Then slowly a sound began. Not a cheer, not a celebration. A mourning song. A traditional Velkaran melody for honoring the dead. Every surviving ship took up the song. On the planet's surface, millions joined in. They sang for their own dead. They sang for the humans who had given everything. They sang for Captain Chen, who had bought them time with his life. Lisa stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, watching the debris field drift in space. Beside her stood Commander Williams, now the senior surviving human officer. "What will you do now?" Lisa asked. "Your ship is gone. Your captain is dead." Williams was quiet for a long moment. "We will rebuild. Find other survivors. Keep fighting the swarm wherever it appears. That is what Marcus would have wanted." "You could stay here," Lisa offered. "Velkara owes you a debt we can never repay." Williams smiled sadly. "No, we are warriors now. We cannot stop fighting while others are still in danger. But we will remember this world. Remember that sometimes peace-loving people can become the fiercest fighters when defending their home." In the days that followed, Velkara mourned and rebuilt. Monuments were erected to the fallen. The council, humbled by events, stepped down and allowed new leaders to emerge. Leaders like Lisa, who understood that peace must sometimes be protected with strength. The surviving humans prepared to depart aboard a Velkaran ship, heading back to human space to report on the battle and continue the fight against the swarm. Before they left, Lisa visited Dr. Okonkwo one last time. "Will we see each other again?" Lisa asked. "I hope so," Okonkwo replied. "Your people have changed, Lisa. You are still Velkarans, still peaceful at heart. But now you know you can be strong too." "That is a valuable lesson," Lisa nodded. She thought about Elder Morvan's question from days ago. Had she changed? Yes. Had her people changed? Yes, but they had not lost themselves. They had simply discovered they were more than they had believed. 6 months later, Lisa stood before the completed monument in Lumenis's central plaza. It was a statue of a human ship, the Indomitable, rendered in crystalline Velkaran art. At its base were inscribed the names of everyone who had died in the battle, both Velkaran and human. She had been appointed as Velkara's first ambassador to humanity. Tomorrow she would depart on a journey to Earth, to the homeworld of the species that had saved hers, to tell them about Captain Chen's sacrifice, to forge an alliance between their peoples. But tonight she stood at the monument and remembered the moment she had frozen mid-sentence when a single human ship appeared above her world. Remembered everything that had followed. The fear, the preparation, the battle, the cost. She looked up at the stars, no longer afraid of what might be waiting there, because now she knew. The universe was dangerous, yes, but it also contained people like Captain Marcus Chen, people who would sacrifice everything for strangers, people who believed that some things were worth fighting for. And if humans could be that way, maybe Velkarans could too. Maybe any species could when it mattered most. "Thank you, Captain," she whispered to the stars. "We will not forget. We will not waste what you gave us. We will be worthy of your sacrifice." Above her the stars shone bright and infinite, and somewhere among them other worlds waited. Other battles, other chances to prove that hope could survive even the darkest times. Lisa smiled. She was ready. Her people were ready. Together they would face whatever came next. Because that was what survivors did. They fell down 7 times and stood up 8. They scattered but endured. And they never ever abandoned those who needed them. The humans had taught them that. And it was a lesson Velkara would carry to the stars. The stars hung silent in the darkness of space, cold and distant like they had been for millions of years. Commander Zeruk sat in his chair on the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance, watching the screens that showed nothing but empty space. His 3 hearts beat slowly, calmly. This was routine work. He had done it 1,000 times before. The Zathran Dominion was famous across the galaxy for one thing. They could scan any ship and know everything about it. Their technology could see through any shield, measure any weapon, and tell you if you would win or lose a fight before the first shot was fired. Zeruk had been doing this job for 40 years. He had scanned vessels from 200 different species. He knew what to expect. The year was 2347 by human counting. The humans were new to space. They had only met other aliens 50 years ago. Most species in the galaxy thought humans were simple creatures who got lucky. They had some basic ships and acted tough. but everyone assumed they were just children playing with toys they did not fully understand. Zerok's second officer, a young female named Craven, looked up from her station. Her mandibles clicked twice, which meant she had found something interesting. She spoke in the clicking language of their people, but the ship's computer translated it into standard galactic speech. "Commander, I am detecting a gravitational distortion. Something large is about to drop out of faster-than-light travel." Zerok nodded. This was normal. Ships traveled between stars by bending space around them. When they slowed down to normal speed, they created ripples that could be detected. He watched his main screen and waited. A moment later, space seemed to tear open. Light bent in strange ways, and then a ship appeared. It was big, maybe 800 meters long. The design was unusual. Most galactic ships were smooth and curved, built for efficiency. This ship looked angry. It had sharp angles and heavy armor plating. Weapons stuck out from its hull like the spines on a dangerous animal. "Identification?" Zerok asked. Craven worked at her console for a moment. "The ship is broadcasting a standard greeting beacon. It identifies itself as the UESS Indomitable, registry number HD447 belonging to the United Earth Space Service. Classification shows it as a destroyer-class vessel." Zerok felt curious. A human ship out here in neutral space. The humans kept to themselves mostly, staying in their own small section of the galaxy. What was a human destroyer doing out here? "Run a full tactical scan," he ordered. This was standard procedure when encountering an unknown vessel. The scan would tell them everything. How powerful were the weapons? How strong were the shields? How many crew members were aboard? The Zathran scanning technology was so advanced that it could even detect how much food was stored in the ship's kitchen. The scanning officer, an old veteran named Tolmec, initiated the sequence. Normally, a scan took 30 seconds. The computer would analyze the data and display it in an easy-to-read format. Zerok would glance at it, note the information in his log, and move on with his patrol. But 30 seconds passed, and the scanning computer was still working. Tolmec's head tilted to one side, which showed confusion among the Zathran people. "Commander, the scan is not completing. The system is requesting more time." "More time?" Zerok stood up from his chair. In 40 years, he had never heard those words. "The scanners never needed more time." "How much more time?" "Unknown, Commander. The computer keeps finding new layers of data. It is as if the ship has systems within systems within systems." 1 minute passed. Then 2. Warning lights began to flash on the tactical console. The computer was working harder than it ever had before. Zerok could hear the cooling systems in the walls working overtime, trying to keep the processors from overheating. Craven looked worried. "Commander, should we abort the scan?" "The system is showing stress indicators." "No," Zerok said firmly. "I want to know what is on that ship. Let the scan finish. 3 minutes. 4 minutes." The crew was silent now, watching their instruments with growing concern. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. The Zathran scanning technology had been developed over 3,000 years. It had scanned everything from tiny scout ships to massive colony vessels carrying 1 million passengers. It had never taken more than 90 seconds to complete a full analysis. Finally, after 5 minutes and 12 seconds, the computer made a sound. The scan was complete. Zerok walked to the tactical console and looked at the display. What he saw made his 3 hearts freeze in his chest. The data scrolled across the screen in long columns of numbers and technical specifications. But it was not the data itself that shocked him. It was the conclusion at the bottom. In bright red letters, the computer displayed a message. "Insufficient parameters. Threat assessment undefined." "What does that mean?" Zerok demanded. "The computer has parameters for every known ship class in the galaxy. How can it be insufficient?" Tolmec's voice was shaking. "Commander, I have been a scanning officer for 28 years. I have never seen this message. The computer is saying that it cannot understand what it is seeing. The human ship does not match any known engineering principles." Zerok leaned closer to the screen, reading the specifications. His eyes grew wider with each line. Hull density was 847% higher than what galactic science said was possible for a mobile vessel. The power output from the reactor was equal to a small sun. The number of redundant systems was insane. Most ships had 3 or maybe 5 backup systems for critical functions. This human destroyer had over 200. The crew complement made no sense either. According to the scan, only 800 beings were aboard. But a ship this size with this many systems should need at least 15,000 crew members to operate properly. And the weapons. The computer's analysis of the weapons made Xerox's blood run cold. The projected firepower was equal to a heavy battlecruiser. But this was classified as a destroyer. Destroyers were small, fast ships meant for escort duty and patrol work. They were not supposed to carry enough weapons to destroy a small moon. This cannot be accurate, Xerox said slowly. Run a diagnostic on the scanning array. There must be an error. Creven worked at her station for 30 seconds, then looked up. Commander, I have run 3 full diagnostics. The scanning array is functioning perfectly. All readings are accurate. Behind Xerox, the weapons officer spoke for the first time. His voice was barely a whisper. Commander, the readings do not make sense. By every measure we have, that ship should be impossible. It should not be able to move. The power requirements alone should tear it apart. But it is sitting out there, clearly functional, clearly operational. Xerox straightened up and made a decision. He needed answers, and there was only one way to get them. Open a communication channel to the human vessel. A moment later, the main screen changed. A human face appeared. It was a female with dark skin and short black hair. She wore a uniform that was crisp and professional. Her eyes were intelligent and alert. According to the data tag that appeared below her image, she was Captain Maria Chen, commanding officer of the UESS Indomitable. This is Commander Xerox of the Zathran vessel Eternal Vigilance, he said, speaking slowly in standard galactic language. We detected your arrival and performed a routine scan. I have some questions about your vessel's specifications, if you do not mind. Captain Chen smiled. It was a friendly smile, warm and genuine. Of course, Commander. What would you like to know? Xerox hesitated. How did he phrase this without sounding insulting? Your ship has some unusual characteristics. The power output, the hull density, the redundant systems. These specifications seem very advanced for a destroyer-class vessel. Captain Chen's smile grew wider. Oh, the Indomitable? She's nothing special, really. Just a standard destroyer configuration. We built her at the Mars orbital shipyards about 3 years ago. There are 43 more ships just like her in this sector alone. The bridge of the Eternal Vigilance fell silent. Xerox felt his 3 hearts begin to beat faster. 43 more ships. 43 more impossibly powerful vessels. Each one defying every rule of galactic engineering. His hands moved automatically, triggering an emergency transmission to Dominion High Command. If what Captain Chen said was true, then every strategic calculation in the galaxy was wrong. The humans were not weak newcomers. They were something else entirely. Something dangerous. Before the transmission could be acknowledged, Craven spoke urgently. Commander, multiple gravitational distortions detected. More ships are arriving. Space tore open in 12 different places. 12 more human warships appeared, forming a loose circle around the Eternal Vigilance. They were all destroyers, all identical to the Indomitable. Each one bristled with weapons. Each one radiated power. Captain Chen's face appeared on the screen again. Her smile was gone now. Her voice was cooler, more formal. Commander Xerox, our sensors detected your deep scan intrusion into our vessel's systems. According to Terran military protocol, unauthorized deep scanning is considered a hostile intelligence gathering action. We are going to need you to power down your weapons and prepare for inspection. Xerox looked around at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes. He felt it himself. They were surrounded by 13 ships, each one more powerful than anything he had ever encountered. And according to Captain Chen, these were just standard destroyers. What else did the humans have? Commander Xerox stared at the 13 human warships surrounding his vessel. His mind raced through his options. He could fight, but the tactical computer had already made its assessment clear. The word undefined still glowed on his screen in red letters. You could not fight what you could not calculate. Power down weapons, he ordered quietly. His crew obeyed immediately. Within seconds, the Eternal Vigilance went dark, showing the universal sign of surrender. Xerox had survived 40 years in military service by knowing when he was outmatched. Captain Chen's voice came through the speakers again, warmer this time. Thank you for your cooperation, Commander. We will send over an inspection team shortly. Please prepare to receive visitors. 3 hours later, Xerox sat in his private office with Captain Chen and 2 of her officers. The humans were surprisingly small compared to most galactic species. Captain Chen barely reached the middle of his chest. But size meant nothing when those tiny beings commanded such powerful ships. "I apologize for the inconvenience," Captain Chen said, sipping from a cup of something hot and dark. The smell was strange but not unpleasant. "But we take security seriously. Your scan was very thorough. Too thorough. We needed to make sure you were not planning an attack." "I assure you, Captain, we meant no harm," Zeruk replied. "The Zathran Dominion has scanning technology that is considered the best in the galaxy. We scan every vessel we encounter. It is routine procedure." "Routine." Chen repeated the word slowly. "Yes, I suppose it would be. But Commander, you need to understand something. In human military doctrine, knowledge is power. Someone who knows everything about our ships can plan how to destroy them. We do not let that happen." Zeruk clicked his mandibles in acknowledgement. "I understand your concern. But Captain, I must be honest with you. The data from our scan has confused my entire crew. Your ship should not be possible. The specifications violate every principle of galactic engineering that has been established over thousands of years." Captain Chen set down her cup and smiled. "Would you like me to explain?" "Very much so." For the next hour, Captain Chen walked Zeruk through the design philosophy of human warships. She brought up holographic displays showing cutaway views of the Indomitable, explaining each system in detail. The more Zeruk learned, the more disturbed he became. The hull was not made from standard composite alloys. Instead, humans used something they called compressed matter reinforcement. They took metal and squeezed it using artificial gravity fields until it became 8 times denser than natural metal. This made the armor incredibly heavy. But humans did not care about efficiency the way other species did. They cared about survival. "Most species build ships that are light and fast," Chen explained. "You want to avoid getting hit. We build ships that assume they will get hit. Our armor is designed to take punishment that would destroy any other vessel." The power core was even more shocking. Most galactic ships used fusion reactors that carefully controlled the fusion process, extracting energy slowly and safely. Human reactors were different. They contained fusion reactions that burned at temperatures found inside stars. The only reason the ship did not melt was because of magnetic containment fields and cooling systems that pumped liquid metal through the entire vessel. "Why would you need so much power?" Zeruk asked. "Because we need to run everything at once," Chen answered simply. "Weapons, shields, engines, life support sensors, computers, and all the backup systems. We never want to choose between one system or another. We want all of them. All the time." The redundant systems were perhaps the most alien concept. Chen showed Zeruk a diagram of the Indomitable's life support network. There were 8 complete life support systems, any one of which could keep the entire crew alive. If 7 of them failed, the 8th would still work. "The same goes for everything," Chen said. "We have backup engines, backup computers, backup power generators, backup weapons control, backup navigation. Everything important has at least 5 complete backup systems. Some critical functions have 20 or more. But why?" Zeruk could not understand. "Your ships must cost a fortune to build. All that redundancy makes them slower and less efficient. Why not build more ships instead of making each ship so complicated?" Captain Chen's expression became serious. Her eyes grew distant as if she was remembering something painful. "Because, Commander, humans know what happens when systems fail at the wrong moment. We have fought wars where a single broken part meant the death of everyone aboard a ship. We have lost thousands of people because a backup system was not there when it was needed. So now we build ships that do not fail, ever. Even if you blow half the ship apart, the other half will keep fighting." The weapons were another source of confusion. Chen explained that the Indomitable carried mass drivers that fired solid projectiles at incredible speeds. Missiles with artificial intelligence that could think for themselves, laser batteries that could burn through armor, and something called nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers that Zeruk did not even try to understand. "Why so many different weapon types?" he asked. "Because different enemies need different solutions," Chen replied. "Some enemies have good shields but weak armor. Some have thick armor but slow engines. Some are big and tough. Some are small and fast. We carry every type of weapon so we are ready for any type of enemy." When the explanation was finished, Zeruk sat back in his chair and tried to process everything he had learned. The humans did not build ships the way the rest of the galaxy did. They built ships like fortresses, like bunkers that could fly through space and fight back against anything that attacked them. "Captain Chen, I must ask you a direct question," Zeruk said slowly. "Who are you preparing to fight?" Who do you expect to face that requires such extreme measures? Chen looked him straight in the eyes. Everyone, Commander. We prepare to fight everyone. That is how humans survived long enough to reach the stars. Before Zeruk could ask what that meant, his communication panel chimed. A message from Dominion High Command was coming through on the emergency channel. Zeruk excused himself and went to his private terminal to read it. The message was short and direct. High Command had received his initial scan data. They were convening an emergency meeting of the Galactic Coalition Council. All member species were being notified. The human military capability needed to be assessed by the entire galaxy, not just the Zathran Dominion. Zeruk returned to his office and shared this news with Captain Chen. He expected her to be worried or angry. Instead, she just nodded calmly. We expected this would happen eventually, she said. Humanity has been keeping a low profile, but we knew sooner or later someone would take a close look at our ships. It might as well be now. You are not concerned? Zeruk asked. Should I be? We have not done anything wrong. We built ships to defend ourselves and our territory. Every species has that right. Yes, but your ships are so much more powerful than what anyone expected. Some species might see this as a threat. Captain Chen stood up and walked to the viewport looking out at the stars. Commander, let me tell you something about humans. We spent 10,000 years fighting each other on our homeworld. We nearly destroyed ourselves dozens of times. We built weapons that could end all life on Earth, and we came very close to using them. When we finally reached space, we made a decision. Never again would we be weak. Never again would we be unprepared. Never again would we lose because we did not build something strong enough. She turned back to face Zeruk. If other species see that as a threat, that is their choice. But they should know that humans do not want war. We have seen enough war to last us forever. These ships exist so that we never have to fight. Because when your enemies know you cannot be defeated, they do not attack in the first place. Later that day, after the humans had left and the Eternal Vigilance was alone again, Zeruk called his senior staff together. They sat around the conference table and he could see the worry on their faces. We need to prepare a full report for High Command, he said. Everything we learned about the human ships needs to be documented and transmitted immediately. Craven spoke up. Commander, I have been analyzing the scan data more closely. I found something else that troubles me. What is it? The human crew complement. Only 800 people on a ship that size. I calculated how this is possible. The humans use automated systems extensively. Their computers control most ship functions. The crew is there mainly for decision-making and repairs. So? Zeruk did not see why this was concerning. So their computers must be incredibly advanced. More advanced than anything we use. If their artificial intelligence can run an entire warship with minimal crew, what else can it do? What if humans decide to build fully automated warships with no crew at all? They could build thousands of them. Tens of thousands. An unstoppable fleet that never gets tired, never makes mistakes, never hesitates. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implication. An automated fleet would be terrifying. It would fight with perfect efficiency, with no concern for casualties, with no morale to break. Tolmec, the old scanning officer, shook his head slowly. I think we may have made a terrible mistake today. What mistake? Zeruk asked. We poked the sleeping giant. Humanity was content to stay in their own space, minding their own business. But now we have forced them into the spotlight. Now the entire galaxy will be watching them, judging them, perhaps even fearing them. And when people are afraid, they do stupid things. They form alliances against the threat. They build bigger weapons. They start wars. Zeruk realized the old officer was right. By scanning the Indomitable, by triggering this chain of events, he might have set the galaxy on a path toward conflict with humanity. And if what Captain Chen said was true, if those destroyers were just standard vessels and humanity had many more of them, then such a conflict could only end one way. With humanity victorious and the rest of the galaxy in ruins, he looked at his crew and saw his own fear reflected in their faces. They had encountered something new in the galaxy. Something powerful and dangerous, but also something that did not seem to want war. The question was, would the rest of the galaxy be smart enough to leave humanity alone, or would fear and pride lead to the worst mistake in galactic history? Zeruk began writing his report, choosing his words carefully. How he described humans could influence how the galaxy reacted. He could paint them as a threat that needed to be contained, or he could present them as a powerful potential ally. He thought about Captain Chen and her calm confidence. He thought about her words about not wanting war. He decided to trust his instincts. He would tell the truth, but he would also include a warning. Do not provoke humanity. Do not threaten them. Because these were not beings who would surrender easily. These were survivors who had learned hard lessons, and they had built ships to make sure those lessons never needed to be learned again. The Galactic Coalition Council chamber on Zenthera Prime was built to impress visitors. The massive dome stretched 200 meters across, with seats arranged in circular tiers that could hold representatives from all 200 member species. Normally, the chamber buzzed with casual conversation, trade negotiations, and minor diplomatic disputes. Today was different. Today, the chamber was silent except for the sound of heavy breathing and nervous movements. Ambassador Sarah Okonkwo sat in the human delegation box, which was positioned in a middle tier, neither high nor low. Humans were still new to the council, and their seating reflected their status as recent members. Sarah was a tall woman in her 50s. With gray hair she wore in neat braids and dark eyes that missed nothing. She had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years, and she had grown used to being ignored during council sessions. Today, every eye in the chamber was fixed on her. On the central display, Commander Xerox's scan data scrolled past. Technical specifications, power output readings, weapons analysis, all the information that had confused and frightened the Zathran crew. Sarah watched the other delegates react. She saw shock, disbelief, and growing fear on alien faces that came in every imaginable shape and color. The Velcor War Marshal stood to speak. The Velcor were an imposing species, 3 meters tall, with thick armor plating that grew naturally from their bodies. They had dominated galactic military affairs for 3,000 years, and their empire controlled 15 star systems. The War Marshal's voice boomed through the chamber, translated instantly into every language. "This data must be false," he declared. "No species advances this rapidly. The humans achieved space travel barely 2 centuries ago. Before that, they were confined to a single planet. This violates every principle of technological development we know. I demand verification." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Many species nodded their heads or equivalent body parts. The Velcor War Marshal continued. "Even if we assume the data is accurate, we must question human intentions. Why build such powerful warships unless you plan to use them? The humans claim they want peace, but these vessels are designed for war. I propose we demand an explanation and ask for limitations on human military expansion." Sarah stood smoothly and pressed the button that would signal her request to speak. The chamber's master of ceremonies, a floating crystalline being called a luminar, acknowledged her with a pulse of light. "Ambassador Okonkwo of Earth, you may address the council." Sarah's voice was calm and clear. "Thank you. I have listened to the concerns raised by the Honorable War Marshal of the Velcor Empire. I understand that our ship designs are unusual by galactic standards. I am authorized to provide any information the council requires. However, I must point out that humanity has not violated any coalition laws or treaties. We have the right to defend ourselves and our territory. The strength of our defenses is our own business." "Your own business?" The Velcor War Marshal's voice dripped with contempt. "When one species suddenly reveals military power that exceeds all others combined, it becomes everyone's business. You could threaten the entire balance of power in the galaxy." "Could but won't," Sarah replied simply. "Humanity seeks peace and cooperation. Our ships are defensive in nature." "Defensive?" A new voice joined the debate. It came from the Hegnor delegation. The Hegnor were a proud warrior species, reptilian, in appearance, with a culture built around honor and combat prowess. Their representative, a scarred veteran named Krathnor, stood with his claws gripping the railing of his box. "I have read the specifications of your vessels," Krathnor said. "Those are not defensive weapons. Those are weapons built to destroy opponents completely and without mercy. As a warrior, I recognize another warrior's tools." Sarah smiled slightly. "You are correct, honored Krathnor. Our weapons are built to destroy threats, but we only use them when attacked. Humanity has been in space for 50 years. In that time, have we invaded anyone? Have we conquered any worlds? Have we started any wars? The chamber fell silent. The answer was obvious. Humanity had kept to itself, developing its own worlds and avoiding conflicts with neighbors. Actions speak louder than words, Sarah continued. We have powerful ships, yes, but we have not used them to threaten anyone. Does that not prove our peaceful intentions? Or it proves you were waiting, the Velcor War Marshal shot back. Building strength before revealing yourselves. It is a classic strategy. Appear weak until you are strong, then strike. Sarah sighed. This was going nowhere. The other species were afraid, and fear made people irrational. She needed to change the conversation. If the Council has doubts about our capabilities or our intentions, I propose a demonstration, she said clearly. The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates spoke to each other in dozens of languages. The Luminar Master of Ceremonies pulsed several times before order was restored. What kind of demonstration? The Luminar asked, its crystalline voice chiming like bells. A practical test, Sarah explained. Provide us with a target and we will show exactly what our ships can do. That way, there will be no more speculation or fear of the unknown. Everyone will see the truth with their own eyes. Krathnor of the Hegnor spoke up immediately. I accept this challenge. The Hegnor have a decommissioned battlecruiser, the Deathless Honor. It was one of our most powerful warships, retired after 60 years of service. It destroyed an entire invasion fleet single-handed during the Kreevil conflict. If your human destroyer can damage it significantly, we will accept that your power is real. Sarah nodded. Agreed. The UESS Indomitable will arrive at whatever location you specify in 3 days. We will provide your demonstration. The Council debated for another hour before agreeing to the terms. The test would take place in the Gamma 7 system, a Dead Star system used for military exercises. Every species was invited to send observer ships. Media organizations scrambled to position their recording drones. Within hours, the entire galaxy knew that humanity was about to prove its military strength, or be exposed as builders of ships that looked impressive, but could not actually fight. 3 days later, thousands of ships gathered in the Gamma 7 system. Observation vessels from every major species maintained a safe distance from the testing area. Media drones filled the space between them, ready to broadcast what happened next to billions of watching citizens across the galaxy. The Deathless Honor hung in the void like a monument to Hegnor engineering. It was a massive vessel, 2 kilometers long, with armor plating 1/2 meter thick. Its shields, even in a decommissioned state, were legendary. During its service life, the Deathless Honor had survived bombardment from 50 ships at once. Its hull showed the scars of dozens of battles, each one a story of victory. The UESS Indomitable arrived precisely on time, emerging from faster-than-light travel with the characteristic ripple of bent space. Compared to the massive battlecruiser, the human destroyer looked small, vulnerable. Several observers laughed. How could such a small ship threaten something so massive? Captain Chen's voice broadcast on all channels, clear and professional. This is Captain Maria Chen of the UESS Indomitable. We are ready to begin the demonstration. Single shot, 30% yield mass driver cannon. Please confirm all observer vessels are at safe distance. The Luminar Master of Ceremonies, present in an observation ship, confirmed that everyone was clear of the danger zone. Beginning demonstration in 10 seconds, Captain Chen announced. The countdown seemed to last forever. 10, 9, 8. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched their screens. 7, 6, 5, diplomats held their breath. 4, 3, 2, military. Commanders leaned forward in their chairs. 1. A flash of light erupted from the Indomitable's main cannon. The projectile was invisible to the naked eye, just a slug of super-dense matter moving at an incredible fraction of the speed of light. It crossed the distance to the Deathless Honor in just over 2 seconds. The impact was devastating beyond all predictions. The battlecruiser's shields, which had withstood sustained fleet bombardment, simply overloaded. They flashed once, twice, then collapsed completely. The energy feedback from their failure caused secondary explosions across the shield generators. But that was just the beginning. The projectile hit the armor like a fist from an angry god. The kinetic energy was so immense that the laws of physics became weapons themselves. The armor did not just crack or dent. It vaporized. A hole 3 meters wide appeared in the battlecruiser's hull, and the projectile continued through, punching out the other side. But the damage did not stop there. The kinetic energy transfer caused a shock wave to ripple through the entire structure of the ship. Metal screamed. Support beams snapped. The Deathless Honor, a ship that had survived 60 years of combat, broke apart like a toy. The entire spine of the vessel split in two. Atmosphere rushed out from 1,000 breaches. Secondary explosions blossomed across its length as power systems overloaded and fuel reserves ignited. Within 10 seconds, the legendary battlecruiser was not a ship anymore. It was debris, tumbling through space in thousands of pieces, each one glowing red from the heat of its own destruction. The silence in the observation fleet was absolute. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They just stared at what remained of the Deathless Honor, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Captain Chen's voice broke the silence. Demonstration complete. As stated, that was a single shot at 30% yield. The Indomitable carries 8 such cannons and sufficient ammunition for sustained combat operations. Are there any questions? There were no questions. What could anyone ask? The evidence was floating in space before them, undeniable and terrifying. Within hours, the galactic economy began to react. The Velcor Empire stock market crashed as investors realized that Velcor military superiority was a myth. Every defense contract in the galaxy was suddenly worthless. Weapons manufacturers watched their stock prices fall. Insurance companies refused to issue policies on military vessels, claiming the risk was now incalculable. Border disputes that had simmered for decades suddenly went cold. Nobody wanted to risk military action when humanity might decide to intervene. Trade negotiations shifted as species realized that economic relationships with humanity might be the best form of insurance against future conflicts. In the council chamber, Ambassador Sarah Okonkwo stood to address the assembled delegates once more. The chamber was packed now. Every species wanted to hear what humanity would say next. Members of the Galactic Coalition, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. You have seen what our ships can do. I will not pretend they are weak. I will not apologize for their strength. Humanity learned long ago that the universe can be a dangerous place. We learned that lesson on our own world, through centuries of conflict and pain. She paused, letting her words sink in. But we also learned another lesson. We learned that strength without wisdom is just destruction. We learned that the greatest victory is the one you never have to fight for. We learned that peace is not the absence of capability, but the choice not to use it. Humanity seeks only peace and cooperation with all species, Sarah continued. We offer our friendship freely. We offer our protection to those who need it. We offer our knowledge and our strength in service of a safer, more secure galaxy. But make no mistake, we also offer a warning. We will defend ourselves, we will defend our allies, and we will not hesitate to act if threatened. She sat down and the chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then slowly, delegates began to whisper to each other. Alliances were being reconsidered. Diplomatic strategies were being rewritten. The galaxy had just learned that it had a new apex predator, and everyone needed to adjust to this new reality. In the Hegner delegation box, Crathnor stood and placed his clawed hand over his heart in a gesture of respect. The Hegner acknowledged the strength of humanity. We were wrong to doubt you. We would be honored to learn from warriors such as yourselves. Other species began to follow suit. Not everyone, but enough to show that humanity had earned respect through demonstration rather than words. The galaxy was learning and the lesson was clear. Never underestimate the humans. Dr. Thelrick stood in the Museum of Human Military History in New Chicago, feeling more disturbed with each passing hour. The Galactic Coalition had sent a scientific commission to Earth demanding answers. They wanted to know how humanity had achieved such advanced military technology in such a short time. They expected to find evidence of ancient alien artifacts. They expected to discover that humans had stolen technology from some long-dead civilization. They expected anything except the truth. The truth was far worse than anyone had imagined. Thelrix was a xenoanthropologist, one of the galaxy's leading experts on how species develop and evolve. He had studied 200 different civilizations, from their earliest Stone Age beginnings to their eventual spacefaring achievements. He thought he understood how intelligent species progressed, but humans were different. Humans were wrong. Everything about their development violated the normal patterns. The Human Guide, A young woman named Dr. Emma Rodriguez walked beside him through the exhibit halls. She seemed cheerful and helpful, completely unaware of how horrifying Thelrix found everything she was showing him. "This section covers early human warfare," Emma explained, gesturing to displays showing primitive weapons. "These stone axes are about 2 million years old. Humans have been creating tools for killing since before we were technically human." Thelrix looked at the crude stone implements. "Most species developed tools for hunting animals. They created spears for defense against predators, but they did not focus on tools for killing their own kind until much later in their evolution. Humans seem to have started with violence. 2 million years of warfare?" Thelrix asked carefully. "Oh, much longer if you count our pre-human ancestors," Emma said happily. "But these are the first weapons we can definitely say were made by early humans. Come on, the next section shows how warfare evolved." The next 3 hours were a nightmare of education. Emma walked Thelrix through 10,000 years of human military innovation. She showed him bronze weapons that were stronger than stone, iron weapons that were sharper than bronze, steel weapons that were sharper still. Each generation of humans found new ways to kill more efficiently. But it was not just the weapons that disturbed Thelrix. It was the scale. Humans did not fight in small groups like most primitive species. They organized themselves into armies of thousands, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. They developed complex strategies and tactics. They built fortifications and siege engines. They created entire philosophies about how to wage war. "This section is particularly interesting," Emma said, leading him to a display about something called the Mongol Empire. In the 13th century, the Mongols conquered the largest continuous land empire in human history. They were incredibly efficient warriors. They could coordinate armies across thousands of kilometers using nothing but horse riders carrying messages. Thelrix read the information panels with growing horror. The Mongols had killed an estimated 40 million people during their conquests. 40 million. Some species never produced 40 million individuals in their entire history. Humans had killed that many in just a few generations of warfare. Surely this was the worst of human violence, Thelrix asked hopefully. Emma laughed. Not a cruel laugh, but a genuine laugh of amusement. "Oh no, Doctor. The Mongols were bad, but humans got much more creative about killing as technology advanced. Come see the gunpowder section. Gunpowder. Humans had learned to weaponize chemical explosions. They built cannons that could destroy castle walls. They created muskets that made armor obsolete. They developed rifles with greater and greater range and accuracy. And they organized themselves into nation-states that could field armies of millions. The First World War," Emma said, stopping at a massive display filled with photographs and artifacts, lasted from 1914 to 1918. It involved most of the major nations on Earth. Approximately 20 million people died. It was called the War to End All Wars. But it did not end wars, Thelrix said quietly, reading ahead to the next exhibit. "No," Emma agreed, her cheerful tone finally fading slightly. 21 years later, we started the Second World War. That one killed between 70 and 85 million people. We developed even more efficient ways of killing. Mechanized warfare, aerial bombardment, industrial-scale death camps. We turned war into an industry." Thelrix felt his 3 stomachs churning. This could not be real. No species did this to itself. No intelligent civilization spent its entire history perfecting the art of self-destruction. But the evidence was everywhere, carefully preserved and displayed for educational purposes. "Why?" Thelrix finally asked. "Why did humans spend so much time and energy on war? Most species experience conflicts, yes, but they also develop art and philosophy and science. You seem to have focused primarily on killing." Emma shook her head. "We developed all those other things too, Doctor. Some of our greatest art came from wartime. Some of our most important philosophical questions arose from the horror of what we did to each other. And science. War drove scientific advancement faster than anything else. We needed better weapons, so we invented better metallurgy. We needed to communicate across battlefields, so we developed radio. We needed to calculate artillery trajectories, so we built computers." She led him to another section, and Thelrix wished she would stop. But he was a scientist. He needed to see this through, no matter how disturbing it was. "This is the atomic age," Emma said, her voice now completely serious. "In 1945, humanity successfully split the atom and turned it into a weapon. These are photographs from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the 2 cities where we used atomic bombs. Thelrix looked at the images of destroyed cities, of shadows burned into walls where people had stood when they were vaporized. He looked at pictures of survivors, their bodies covered in radiation burns. He read the casualty estimates. Over 200,000 people killed instantly or dying slowly from radiation poisoning. You built weapons that could destroy your own species, Thelrix said, his voice barely a whisper. Why? Because we were at war, Emma replied simply. The bombs ended the Second World War. They probably saved millions of lives by preventing a full-scale invasion of Japan. But yes, we built weapons capable of destroying ourselves, and then we built thousands more. The next display showed the Cold War. Two massive human nations armed with tens of thousands of nuclear weapons, all pointed at each other. Enough destructive power to render Earth uninhabitable several times over. For 50 years, humans lived under the threat of total annihilation. For 50 years, they maintained this balance of terror, where one mistake could mean the end of everything. How did you survive? Thelrix asked. How did you not destroy yourselves? Emma smiled sadly. Luck, mostly. And the fear of what we had created. We called it mutually assured destruction. If one side launched their weapons, the other side would launch theirs. Both sides would be destroyed. Nobody could win, so nobody launched. We were smart enough to be terrified of our own weapons. And this is why your warships are built the way they are, Thelrix said, understanding finally dawning. You assume everything will fail because you have seen everything fail. You build redundancy because you know that one failed system can mean death. You build overwhelming firepower because you know what it takes to truly destroy an enemy. Exactly, Emma confirmed. Our warships are not built by species who spent thousands of years developing slowly and peacefully. They are built by species who spent 10,000 years fighting ourselves, learning hard lessons in blood and fire. Every human warship carries the memory of every mistake we ever made. Every battle we lost because we were not prepared enough, not strong enough, not ruthless enough when we needed to be. Thelrix spent another week on Earth, visiting more museums, talking to more historians and military experts. He learned about submarine warfare in Earth's oceans, where vessels had to survive crushing pressure and potential destruction at any moment. He learned about aerial combat, where split-second decisions meant the difference between life and death. He learned about space programs that were originally developed to deliver nuclear weapons to the other side of the planet. Everything humans had built was forged in conflict. Their entire civilization was a monument to survival against their own worst instincts. On his last day on Earth, Thelrix met with a human military engineer named Colonel James Park. Park was responsible for designing defensive systems for human warships. I need to understand your design philosophy, Thelrix said. Why do you build ships that seem so paranoid? So over-engineered? Colonel Park leaned back in his chair and thought for a moment before answering. Doctor, have you ever been on a submarine? A real military submarine operating in deep water? No. I served on submarines for 15 years before I moved to spaceship design. A submarine is a metal tube that operates in an environment that wants to crush it. Every single system on a submarine needs to work perfectly, because if it fails, everyone dies. We do not have the luxury of half measures or good enough. We build submarines that can survive having half the hull torn open. We build them with enough redundancy that even catastrophic damage still leaves options. Park stood and walked to a window overlooking a shipyard where a new human cruiser was under construction. When we started building warships for space, we brought that same philosophy with us. Space is even more hostile than the ocean depths, and unlike Earth's oceans, space has potential enemies. So we build ships that assume they will take damage. We build ships that can survive losing half their systems. We build ships that can keep fighting even when everything has gone wrong. But why so much firepower? Thelrix asked. Your weapons exceed anything the galaxy has seen. Because we know what war looks like, Park replied quietly. Most galactic species have small skirmishes, border disputes, short conflicts that end with negotiated settlements. Humans have fought wars that consumed entire continents for years at a time. We have fought wars where victory meant total destruction of the enemy, and defeat meant extinction. We do not build weapons for small fights. We build weapons for wars of survival, and we make sure we have enough weapons to win those wars, because losing is not an option. Thelrix returned to his ship that evening and began writing his report for the Galactic Coalition. He chose his words carefully, knowing that his report would influence how the galaxy viewed humanity for generations to come. He wrote about human history, about their 10,000 years of constant warfare. He wrote about their technological development, driven by the need to kill more efficiently. He wrote about their near extinction during the nuclear age, and how they had survived by learning to fear their own power. But most importantly, he wrote a warning. Humanity did not build a military despite being peaceful, he wrote. They built a military because they know, intimately and personally, the cost of being unprepared for war. Every human warship is not a symbol of aggression. It is a monument to their darkest memories. It is a promise they made to themselves. Never again will they be weak. Never again will they be unprepared. Never again will they lose because they did not build something strong enough. He concluded his report with a single recommendation. The Galactic Coalition must decide whether to view humanity as a threat or as an ally. But whatever we decide, we must never forget what we have learned. Humans are not dangerous because they want war. They are dangerous because they understand war better than any species in the galaxy. They have practiced it longer, suffered through it more deeply, and learned its lessons more thoroughly than anyone else. If we must have warriors in our galaxy, we should be grateful those warriors are on our side. When his report was distributed throughout the coalition, it changed everything. Species stopped seeing human warships as threats and started seeing them as insurance. The galaxy began to understand that they had not discovered conquerors. They had discovered survivors. 3 months after the demonstration in the Gamma 7 system, the galaxy had settled into a new reality. The Galactic Coalition Council had restructured its security arrangements. Trade routes had been renegotiated, defense budgets had been recalculated, and humanity, once ignored as newcomers with primitive technology, now found that every species in the galaxy wanted to talk to them. Ambassador Sarah Okonkwo sat in more meetings than she could count. Species wanted defense treaties. They wanted to purchase human technology. They wanted human instructors to train their military forces. Some wanted reassurance that humanity would not use its power to conquer. Others wanted promises that humanity would help defend them if threatened. Sarah was patient with all of them. She explained over and over that humanity sought only peace and cooperation, that human warships existed for defense, not conquest, that Earth's violent past had taught them the true cost of war, and they had no desire to repeat those lessons. Most species seemed to believe her. The change in galactic attitudes was remarkable. Border disputes that had threatened to become wars suddenly found peaceful solutions. Nobody wanted to fight when humanity might intervene. The mere presence of human destroyers on patrol in neutral space became a guarantee of peace. But not everyone was convinced. And not everyone was happy with the new balance of power. The Krell swarm had existed on the edges of coalition space for 200 years. They were a hive mind species. Billions of individual creatures controlled by a central intelligence. They had no interest in peaceful coexistence. They wanted resources, territory, and biomass to feed their endless reproduction. For generations, they had tested coalition defenses, raiding frontier colonies and retreating when faced with strong opposition. The Krell understood calculations. They knew how to measure acceptable losses against potential gains. They had observed galactic military capabilities for decades. They knew exactly how many ships they needed to overwhelm any defense fleet. They were patient predators, waiting for the right moment to strike. When news of human military power reached the Krell, they did not panic like other species. The Krell analyzed the data coldly. Yes, human ships were powerful, but they were also few in number. Humans only had a few hundred warships spread across their territory. The Krell could field thousands of bioships. Numbers could overcome technology. The Krell had destroyed more powerful opponents before by simple mass attack. The Krell decided to test this theory. New Viridian was a frontier colony world in the Theta sector, home to 4.3 million beings from a dozen different species. It was not a wealthy world or a strategic location, but it was vulnerable, far from major fleet bases, protected by only a small defense force. The perfect target for a Krell raid. 50 Krell bioships entered the Theta sector, moving in perfect synchronization. They were living vessels, grown rather than built, with weapons that fired acid and organic missiles that hunted targets like predators. The Krell had used these ships to terrorize the frontier for generations. They expected another easy raid, another chance to gather resources and retreat before serious opposition arrived. They did not expect the UESS Indomitable, Captain Maria Chen, now promoted to Commodore after the Gamma 7 demonstration, was conducting a routine patrol with 3rd Fleet when the distress call came from New Viridian. The colony's defense platforms were being overwhelmed. Civilians were evacuating to underground shelters. The small defense fleet was fighting bravely but was outnumbered 10-1. Set course for New Viridian, maximum speed, Chen ordered immediately. Notify Admiral Nakamura that we are engaging enemy forces. Request reinforcements but do not wait for authorization. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this moment. Every human crew trained constantly, running simulations of every possible combat scenario. The Indomitable had been in service for 3 years and had never fired its weapons in actual combat. But the crew was ready. The destroyer dropped out of faster-than-light travel between the Krell swarm and the planet. The Krell ships immediately turned to face this new threat. 50 bioships against 1 human destroyer. The odds seemed overwhelming. But the Krell did not understand human combat doctrine. Weapons free, Chen said calmly. Target the lead elements. Full spread, all batteries. The Indomitable opened fire with everything it had. Mass driver rounds crossed the distance at a significant fraction of light speed. Missiles with artificial intelligence guidance systems launched by the dozens. Laser batteries painted the space ahead with coherent light. And for the first time in actual combat, a human warship deployed nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers. A nuclear warhead detonated in the center of the Krell formation. The explosion itself was not the weapon. Instead, the energy from the explosion channeled through dozens of disposable laser rods, creating focused beams of X-rays that sliced through Krell bioships like a blade through paper. 20 ships died in less than 3 seconds. The Krell swarm adapted quickly. They were a hive mind, capable of learning and adjusting tactics instantly. They scattered, trying to surround the Indomitable and attack from multiple angles. It was a good strategy. Against any other species, it would have worked. But human point defense systems were designed to handle exactly this situation. Lasers tracking hundreds of targets per second created a defensive sphere around the destroyer. Missiles that tried to penetrate the defense were destroyed before they could impact. Acid projectiles vaporized before they could reach the hull. Chen watched her tactical display with satisfaction. The Indomitable systems were performing exactly as designed. Launch counter-missiles pattern Delta. Target their command nodes. The Krell ships operated as a collective, but they still needed coordination vessels that directed the swarm. Human sensors had identified these command nodes within seconds of engagement. Missiles specifically designed to hunt the most dangerous targets raced toward them. 5 command vessels died. The Krell swarm lost cohesion for a moment, individual ships trying to coordinate on their own. That moment was all Chen needed. Fire all mass drivers. Maximize rate of fire. 8 cannons opened fire in rapid sequence. Each shot carried the kinetic energy of a small asteroid impact. Krell bioships did not have shields like galactic vessels. They relied on thick organic armor and rapid healing, but you could not heal from being blown apart by sheer kinetic force. The battle lasted 17 minutes from first shot to last. When the rest of 3rd Fleet arrived, they found the Indomitable drifting slowly through a field of Krell debris. The destroyer had taken some damage. Acid burns scarred its hull. Several point defense lasers were offline. But the ship was functional, the crew was alive, and New Viridian was safe. Most importantly, not a single Krell bioship escaped. The swarm that had terrorized the frontier for 2 centuries had learned a new fact. Humans were apex predators, and apex predators did not show mercy to threats. The news of the battle reached the Galactic Coalition within hours. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The Krell, who had never retreated from any territory they claimed, withdrew from all frontier zones. Their hive mind had calculated a new truth. Humans could be beaten by superior numbers perhaps, but the cost would be unacceptable. Better to avoid human space entirely. Other aggressive species took note. Pirates who had operated with near impunity suddenly found their hideouts exposed and destroyed by human strike forces. Border raiders learned that attacking colonies under human protection was suicide. Slowly, carefully, the frontier became safer than it had been in centuries. The Galactic Coalition convened again, and this time the tone was very different. Ambassador Okonkwo stood before the council with a proposal that would change everything. Humanity offers a mutual defense initiative, she announced. We will provide military technology, training, and fleet support to any coalition member who requests it. In return, we ask for scientific cooperation, cultural exchange, and access to resources we need for continued ship production. The proposal was not charity. Humanity needed resources from across the galaxy to maintain its fleet. Rare elements, advanced materials, scientific knowledge that other species had developed over thousands of years. A fair trade, human military expertise for galactic knowledge. The debate lasted 3 days. Some species worried about becoming dependent on human protection. Others feared that human military instructors would learn too much about their capabilities. But in the end, the vote was nearly unanimous. The galaxy had seen what happened when the Krell challenged humanity. Nobody wanted to be on the wrong side of that equation. Over the following year, human engineers worked alongside alien scientists across the galaxy. They designed hybrid defense systems that combined human durability with alien efficiency. They developed new ship classes that incorporated the best ideas from multiple species. They trained coalition crews in human tactics, teaching them how to survive against overwhelming odds. The results were remarkable. Coalition ships became tougher, more resilient, harder to destroy. Casualty rates in frontier skirmishes dropped dramatically. Species that had been victims for generations learned to defend themselves effectively. Commander Zir-Uk, now promoted to admiral and serving as liaison between the Zathran Dominion and human defense forces, found himself working closely with Commodore Chen. They spent many hours discussing military strategy and ship design. One day, during a quiet moment, Zir-Uk asked the question that had haunted him since that first scan. "Your people have seen such horror," he said quietly. "Your own history is filled with war and death and near extinction. How do you maintain hope? How do you build for peace when you know so much about war?" Chen looked out the viewport at the stars. She was silent for a long moment before answering. "Because we remember what we survived, Admiral. We destroyed ourselves and came back. We built weapons of annihilation and chose not to use them. We reached the stars not because it was easy, but because staying on Earth meant staying enemies. Every human ship carries our history, the bad and the good. We are peaceful, but we are not pacifists. There is a difference." "What is the difference?" Zir-Uk asked. "Pacifists refuse to fight because they believe violence is always wrong," Chen explained. "We refuse to fight because we know exactly what violence costs. We have paid that price too many times. But if we must fight, if there is no other choice, we will do so with complete commitment. Because half measures in war just mean more suffering, longer conflicts, more death. If we must fight, we fight to win quickly and decisively. That is the kindest thing we can do." Zir-Uk thought about this for a long time. He had been a military officer for 50 years, but he had never heard war described this way. Humans viewed military power not as glory or honor or strength, but as a terrible burden they carried to protect others from experiencing what they had experienced. The galaxy continued to change. Former enemies became cautious allies. Border disputes were settled through negotiation rather than violence. The coalition fleet, now incorporating human technology and tactics, became a true defensive force rather than a collection of individual national fleets that barely cooperated. And throughout it all, human destroyers patrolled the frontier, not as conquerors or oppressors, but as guardians. The ships that had once terrified the galaxy now served as its shield. The species that nearly destroyed itself had become the protector others called upon when danger threatened. In the depths of space, scanners from 1,000 species continuously monitored human vessels, but they no longer scanned to assess threats. They scanned to learn, to understand, to incorporate human innovations into their own designs. The data that had once shown an impossible ship now showed the future of galactic defense. The galaxy had learned its lesson well. When those scanners hit a human warship, they detected more than weapons and armor. They detected wisdom born from suffering. They detected strength tempered by restraint. They detected a species that understood war so well that they were willing to do almost anything to avoid it. But most importantly, they detected commitment. Humanity had made a promise not just to themselves but to the entire galaxy. They would never again be weak. They would never again be unprepared. And they would never again stand by while others faced the kind of darkness that had once consumed their own world. The Indomitable and her sister ships continued their patrols, silent guardians watching over a galaxy that had finally learned a simple truth. Peace was not the absence of military power. Peace was the choice not to use that power except when absolutely necessary. And humanity, with all its terrible history and hard-earned wisdom, had made that choice. The galaxy was safer because of it, and the species that had once scanned a human warship in curiosity now looked to those same ships with gratitude. The humans had shown them something remarkable. They had shown them that the strongest warriors could also be the most dedicated peacekeepers. And that made all the difference.